chapter leader for Cleveland, Ohio, and your chapter leader. Thank you so much for coming, all of you. Gabriel lost her childhood to militant Islam. In 1975, she was 10 years old, living in southern Lebanon, when militant Muslims from throughout the Middle East poured into her country and declared jihad against the Lebanese Christians. Lebanon was the only Christian-influenced country in the Middle East, and the Lebanese Civil War was the first front in what has become the worldwide jihad of fundamentalist Islam against non-Muslim peoples. For 7 years, Brigitte and her parents lived in an underground bomb shelter. She will explain more of that tonight. She is now the founder and president of Act for America. Ms. Gabriel is one of the leading national security experts in the world, providing information and analysis on the rise of Islamic terrorism. Ms. Gabriel lectures nationally and internationally about national security and current affairs. Her expertise is sought after by world and business leaders. She's addressed the UN twice, the Australian Prime Minister, members of the British Parliament, House of Commons, members of the US Congress, the Pentagon, Joint Forces Staff College, US Special Operations Command, US Asymmetric Warfare Group, the FBI, and many others. Quite frankly, she ought to go down to the Oval Office and have a talk. In addition, Ms. Gabriel is a regular guest analyst on Fox News channels, CNN, MSNBC, probably not lately, and various radio stations daily across America. She serves on the board of advisors of the Intelligence Summit. Ms. Gabriel is the author of 2 New York Times bestsellers, Because They Hate and They Must Be Stopped. We have the second one here tonight, They Must Be Stopped. Ms. Gabriel is named one of the top 50 most prominent speakers in America. She speaks Arabic, French, English, and Hebrew. East Ohio, welcome to Brigitte Gabriel.
This is perfect. Thank you. Wow. Hello, family. This is our Act for America chapter meeting. Wow. Wow. I am speechless. I cannot even begin to express how I feel to walk into a city in the United States, to one of our Act for America chapter meeting, an organization I started out of my guest bedroom. It was Act Suite 201, meaning second floor, first room on the right. And to be able to walk into a room like this, thank you, and to be able to walk into a room like this and see all your wonderful faces. And I am speechless. I thank you so much for taking the time to be here tonight. I am truly honored with your presence. I know you could be doing a million other things tonight, yet you chose to come here to hear about what we can do to save our country. Thank you for your engagement. Thank you for your involvement. You know, people ask me all the time, Brigitte, don't you get depressed talking about terrorism and radical Islam? And I tell them, of course I do. I'm a human just like you. But what keeps me so energized, what keeps me so alive, is when I travel the country and go speak to our chapters at different meetings, just like this one, and at other mega churches and mega functions and mega business organizations, and see people coming out to hear me speak. It truly humbles me. So I truly thank you for being here tonight. Thank you so much. Obviously, you are here tonight because you are concerned about the issue of national security. That's my specialty. That's what Act for America is all about. Protecting the United States of America, protecting our values, protecting our freedoms and everything we stand for. The national security issue is an American issue. It's not a Republican issue. It's not a Democratic issue. It's not a Libertarian issue. It's an American issue. America has been attacked under different administrations by radical Islam since 1979, regardless whether we had a Republican or a Democrat in the White House. America was attacked the first time under the Carter administration, a Democrat with the hostages in Iran. America was attacked again under the Ronald Reagan administration in 1983 with the bombings of the Marines in Lebanon. He was a Republican. America was attacked again under George Bush Sr. administration. America was attacked again under the Clinton administration, a Democrat, with the bombings of the World Trade Center the first time in 1993. It was also under President Clinton that the Taliban trained 10,000 Al-Qaeda members in Afghanistan. Now, these people were not being trained for entertainment. They were being trained to attack the United States of America. At that time, George Bush Jr. and Dick Cheney were not even a blurb on the political American landscape. And then, of course, America was attacked again under George Bush Jr. in 2001. And people thought, if we just get rid of George Bush and elect President Obama, all our sins are going to be forgiven. The whole world is going to come together and sing Kumbaya. Well, obviously that did not happen. Because 2 days after President Obama became president, Al-Qaeda issued a press release saying, we continue our jihad against the United States regardless of who lives in the White House. And since President Obama became president, in the first 4 years of his administration, we have arrested on American soil 226 homegrown terrorists. 186 of them were Muslims. We have a problem in our country when a faith-based group that accounts for less than 2% of the American population is responsible for over 80% of terrorist plots against the United States. And this is a fact, that's not an opinion. And that's only in the first 4 years of his administration. That doesn't count, that's before ISIS started. That doesn't count what we are dealing with today, that we can barely keep up with the numbers. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about the national security issue because it has affected my life personally. And I know a lot of you here tonight who came to this meeting because you heard me give an interview on the radio talking about national security and terrorism, who may not know my background. So I'm going to share with you 5 minutes as to where this fire within comes from. I was born and raised in Lebanon, which used to be the only majority Christian country in the Middle East. We were open-minded, we were fair, we were tolerant, we were multicultural. We prided ourselves in our multiculturalism. We had open border policy. We welcomed everyone into our country because we wanted to share with them the westernization which we had created in the heart of the Middle East. Muslims send their children to study in our universities because we had built the best universities in the Middle East. They graduated and worked in our economy because we had built the best economy in the Middle East, even though we did not have any oil. Beirut became known as Paris of the Middle East, the banking capital of the Middle East. National Geographic magazine in 1965 had on its front cover, Lebanon, Eden of the Middle East. Unfortunately, all that began to change as the Muslims became the majority and the Christians became the minority. My 9/11 happened to me in 1975 when radical Islamists blew up my home, bringing it down, burying me under the rubble wounded as they shouted Allahu Akbar. I ended up in a hospital for 2.5 months. And as I laid in a hospital bed, hooked up to IVs in both arms, I would ask my father, why did they do this to us? And my father would tell me, because we are Christians, the Muslims consider us infidels, and they want to kill us. So I learned since I was a 10-year-old little girl that I am wanted dead simply because I was born into the Christian faith and lived in a Christian town. I ended up leaving the hospital and coming back home, but my home was no longer the home I left. I ended up living in a bomb shelter underground in an 8x10 room without electricity, without water, and with very little food. To get some food, we would crawl out under the bombs, and we would dig out dandelions and different vegetation that grew around our bomb shelter because it was the only greenery we had to eat. To get some water, we would crawl under snipers' bullets to a nearby spring. And every time before we left our bomb shelter, we would say our last goodbyes because we did not know if we're going to come back alive or dead, just to get a drink of water because we were surrounded by snipers shooting at us. This became my existence. And in the beginning of the war, we thought America's going to come save the Christians. My father would say, all the big Christian countries are going to come to Lebanon and save the Christians and see what's happening to the Christians. Because that's when the massacres happened. And we were hearing stories about what was happening in Beirut and all the killings that were taking place. But the world forgot about us. The Muslims used to walk into a bomb shelter. In a Christian town, they used to surround the Christian towns, walk into a bomb shelter, find a mother and a father hiding with a little baby in a bomb shelter. They would take the baby, tie one leg of the baby to the mother and another one to the father, and pull the parents apart, splitting the child in half. They used to walk into our churches, urinate and defecate on the altar, destroy our churches, and use the Bible as toilet paper. They used to surround Christian cities and crucify men. One of the most famous massacres in Lebanon was the massacre of the Moor, where they would go in, the Christians hid in the churches, they thought they would be safe, where the Muslims went in and literally crucified Christians. People hear about ISIS today and they think this is new. This is a new phenomenon, killing the Christians. The last lady that worked for me, I hired her because she was mentally disturbed when I was in Lebanon. I hired her so I can take care of her, because the Islamists walked into her bomb shelter. They took her only child, 16 years old, tied him on her lap, held a knife to her hand, and made her slit her own son's throat, and then raped her 2 daughters in front of her. That's the news that was seldom reported in Western media, because all the media was located in West Beirut, the area that the Palestinians headed by Yasser Arafat controlled. And everybody ignored what was happening to the Christians. We knew what our fate was going to be. And my father said, well, the big Christian cities, the big Christian countries are hearing about what's happening in Lebanon. France is going to come. Britain is going to come. Australia is going to come save the Christians. America is going to come save the Christians. But the world forgot about us. I ended up living in that bomb shelter for 7 years of my life, from the age of 10 till the age of 17, fighting to survive, robbed of my youth. I remember 3 years into our ordeal, one of our Christian militia friends stopped by and he said, Brigitte, we heard a lot of chatter on the radio, and I just want you to know that we know we're going to be attacked tonight. And he said, if I don't see you tomorrow, I wish you a merciful death. And he left. And I remember at the age of 13 years old, putting on my Sunday best, my Easter dress, because I wanted to look pretty when I am dead, knowing that when they come to slaughter me, there would be no one to bury me. And I remember begging my mother, I don't want to die, please, I don't want to die, as she combed my long black hair down to my hips and tied a white ribbon in my hair. And there was nothing my mother could say to me. And we sat in the corner of our bomb shelter. And my father started reading from Psalms. I shall walk into the valley of death and fear no evil, for thou art with me. And my parents said to me, we will create a distraction. If they come to slaughter us tonight, we just want you to run towards Israel and don't look back. Never look back. We lived a long life. You see, we lived 5 kilometers from the Israeli border. Thank God I did not have to make that decision that night, because that's the night when Israel came in physically into Lebanon and established the security zone and set up artillery bases around our towns to stop the Islamic radicals from coming and the Palestinians from coming in and slaughtering us. And this is how we lived for another 5 years in that bomb shelter until 1982, when Israel came in physically into Lebanon and working with the Christians, invaded Lebanon, working with the Christians, trying to help the Christians take back their democracy and kick out the radical Islamic element that had taken control of the country at that time. Can I ask you kindly to turn that light off? Thank you so much. Yes, the phone, the camera that you're holding. Thank you very much. Very distracting. Thank you. It's okay. Because by the time Israel came into Lebanon in 1982, we had 11 Islamic terrorist organizations operating out of Lebanon at that time. And this is how Israel came in. And that's how we came out of our bomb shelter and back to rebuilding our lives. I ended up moving to Israel in 1984 and becoming news anchor for world news in the Middle East, covering world events and reporting on world events. And I worked as a news anchor from 1984 till 1989. And that's when we started seeing a rise of terrorist activities around the globe and terrorist attacks. And as I read the news night after night, I started realizing that there was a pattern developing. The name of the perpetrators, no matter where the terrorist activity took place, no matter on what continent, the name of the perpetrators were always Muslims. Ahmed, Muhammad, Hussein, Ali. The name of the victims were always Westerners, Christians and Jews. Terry Waite, Terry Anderson, Colonel Higgins, the Akili Lauro, the TWA flight, the Pan Am flight, and I can go on and on. As a matter of fact, in my first book, titled Because They Hate, I list pages upon pages of all the attacks that the Islamists perpetrated against the West and against America, where America hit the snooze button and went back to sleep. And I started realizing that what I used to think was a regional problem between a majority Muslim Middle East trying to either kill or expel the minority Christians and Jews had become a worldwide problem. But the world was not paying attention. The world was not connecting the dots. And isn't this exactly what the 9/11 Commission report said to us? We lacked imagination. It's not that we did not know that the terrorists want to attack the United States. It's not that we did not know that Al-Qaeda wants to attack the United States. After all, they attacked us the first time in 1993 with the bombings of the World Trade Center. They attacked the Kubar Towers in 1995. They attacked our embassies in Kenya and Tanzania in 1997. They attacked the USS Cole in 2000. And then they were so sure, so safe in our apathy, in our ignorance, in our lack of interest, that they came back and re-attacked the World Trade Center the second time in 2001. And this time brought the buildings down and killed almost 3,000 Americans. It's not that we did not know what they wanted to do to us. After all, we have never been faced with an enemy that tells us exactly why they hate us, how much they hate us, how they want to kill us, why they want to kill us. They not only tell us about it, they issue press releases about it, they write about it on the internet, they even record a video press release and mail it to Al Jazeera. They don't mail it by courier, to air worldwide, to tell us how much they hate us. And under all administrations since 2001, every single one of them buried their head in the sand, and none of them wanted to discuss the problem, nor the ideology, or what is driving them. And it all started with President Bush. I'm an equal opportunity offender here, because the national security issue is an American issue. It's not a Republican issue, it's not a Democratic issue. President Bush came out immediately saying, Islam is a religion of peace. Everybody, all our elected officials were bending backward and forward, tying themselves up like a pretzel, trying to run through the first red light to get to the nearest mosques to tell the Muslim, it's not your fault, you had nothing to do with this, Islam has nothing to do with it. Instead of calling the Muslim community on the carpet and saying, how can we have 19 hijackers that came out of your community from all over the United States, and none of you came forward and said anything. And don't tell me these 19 people just dropped from the sky. Nobody wanted to discuss the ideology. They told us it was Al-Qaeda's problem. Once we get rid of Al-Qaeda, everything's going to be fine. It's only Al-Qaeda. They ignored all other terrorists across the globe. Al-Qaeda was our problem. Well, now, when you look at it, now we have ISIS, obviously. And now when you look, now all you hear about on television is ISIS, ISIS, ISIS. When was the last time you heard anything about Al-Qaeda? Unless Al-Qaeda said something to ISIS and then we report it. Like what happened this week. But everything now, the talk du jour is ISIS. That's our problem. But nobody is talking about the ideology that is bonding all terrorists across the globe. When you look at what's bonding them all together, and you start looking at terrorist organizations across the globe, you started realizing whether it's Boko Haram in Nigeria, whether it's Al-Shabaab in Somalia, whether it's Ashkar al-Taibi in India, Ansar al-Sharia in Libya, ISIS in Iraq al-Sham, Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Al-Ikhwan al-Muslimun in Egypt, it doesn't matter what name they go by. What brings them all together is the ideology. Whether they are black, it transcends all color. I mean, these organizations don't even speak the same language. Boko Haram in Nigeria is black. They don't speak Arabic. Al-Shabaab in Somalia, Lashkar Taibi in India, they don't speak Arabic, they're Indians. When you start looking at this and you start thinking, how can our government and our leadership misrepresent the truth for us or lie to us for so long? But that's the reality we are dealing with, and it's about time we discuss the ideology and what is driving them. And in order for you to understand this ideology that everybody talks about but nobody really wants to talk about, so I'm going to lay it all out to you right now. And in order for me to do that, I'm going to crunch 1,400 years of history in 5 minutes and make it as exciting as possible. Because I hated history when I was growing up. But those who don't learn from history are what? Doomed to repeat it. Oh, I'm talking to a smart group. In order for us to defeat radical Islam, we need to understand what is the ideology. Prophet Muhammad supposedly got his revelation from the angel Gabriel in the early 600s, that he is supposed to be the last of the prophets. So he started preaching in his own city, Mecca, telling them about his new religion. And he tried and he tried and he tried for 12 years and failed to recruit any followers except for his immediate family and close friends. So finally he decided after 12 years, forget my people, I'm going to go to the Jews in Medina. And the Jews in Medina was a Jewish business hub, the Jewish business center of Arabia at the time. And he said, I'm going to go to Medina and preach my religion to the Jews. Because if the Jews accept me, that will give me stature and respect in the eyes of my own people. And in order for Muhammad to sell his religion to the Jews, to make it more palatable to them, to accept him, he borrowed a lot from the Old Testament and incorporated it into his new religion, Islam. This is why you see a lot of similarities between Judaism and Islam. For example, Jews don't eat pigs, Muslims don't eat pigs. Jews pray a few times a day, Muslims pray a few times a day. Jews fast on Yom Kippur, Muslims fast on Ramadan. Religious Jews wash their hands before meals, for prayers. Muslims do the same thing. So Muhammad packaged this whole new package deal about the people of the book and the people of the book and went to Medina and started preaching to the Jews. And after he tried, the Jews said, no, thank you. We like our religion. We accept you. You're a nice guy. We welcomed you as our guest in our city. But thank you so much. We are very happy being Jewish and we do not want to become Muslims. We do not want to accept you. And that's when Prophet Muhammad became a military warrior and declared war against them. That's when Islam changed from being a spiritual movement in the first 12 years of Islam into becoming a political movement cloaked in religion. This is why when the Muslims celebrate the New Year, just like the Chinese have the New Year's, the Jews have the New Year's, the Muslims have the New Year. Their New Year is based on the year of the Hijrah, the year Muhammad went to Medina and Islam became a political movement cloaked in religion. They don't consider the New Year, they don't celebrate the New Year based on when Muhammad got his revelation from the angel Gabriel. It's when Muhammad became a military warrior and the political birth of Islam. That's the Islamic New Year. When the Jews refused to accept Muhammad, he turned against them. He started expelling them out of their homes. He started taking their goods. Jews and Christians became dhimmi under Islam, second-class citizens. Jews were not allowed to blow the shofar. They were not allowed to build temples. They were not allowed to pray publicly. Jews were not allowed to ride horses. They could only ride donkeys. Jews became najis. Najis is the Arabic word for filth, bodily fluid, dogs, all these things that are supposedly cursed by Allah. And Jews and Christians could not ring church bells. Christians could not pray publicly. They could not build churches. So, and the way they paid the jizya or the protection tax was by a monthly ceremony where the Jew or the Christian would kneel on his knees publicly and hand his goods to the mullah, whatever those goods were, happened to be at that time. And in many areas, Jews and Christians were given a receipt to wear around their neck as a necklace to show that they paid or they bought their protection, the jizya, the protection tax. As a matter of fact, Islam came up with identifiable clothing for the Jews. The yellow star, which most people think is a German invention, the yellow star is an Islamic invention by the second Khalif, the Khalif al-Mutawakkil in Iraq, who came up with the yellow star for the Jews to identify the Jews as they walk down the street. Because in that part of the world, everybody looks the same. For the Christians, they came up with the zunar, the belt that all of you men are wearing around your pants. That's called the zunar in Arabic. That was what they came up with to identify the Christians as they walked down the street. This became the fate of the Jews and the Christians under Islam. Islam continued to grow out of Arabia. They went all the way to Jerusalem. They conquered Jerusalem. In Jerusalem, Christians could not ring church bells. In the place of the birth of Christ, the city of Christ, Christians could not ring church bells. Christians could not pray publicly. Christians could not build churches. That's when the Pope in Rome in 1090 looked at the Christians in Europe and said, you need to rise and co-defend the Christians and liberate them from the grip of Islam in Jerusalem. That's why the Crusaders were launched in 1090. The Crusaders went to Jerusalem and fought the Muslims, and they were able to liberate the city, but liberated it for less than 80 years. Before 100 years, Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi, Saladin, recaptured the city, took it back, and Jerusalem remained under Islamic control until the year 1967, when the State of Israel liberated Jerusalem from the Islamic grip, and Jews, Christians, and Muslims could pray under the same sky. The Crusaders continued fighting the Muslims, but the Crusaders could not win against Islam because Islam was so powerful. The Crusaders fought for 300 years, and finally by the 1300s completely dissipated, gave up and disappeared because they could not defeat Islam. Islam continued to grow. They went all the way into Spain. They went all the way into central China. They went all the way into central Europe. They conquered India. And as they expanded, they changed the names of the cities. Spain became Andalusia. Jerusalem, Jerusalem became Al-Quds. But what's the best way to strip a society out of its identity? Strip it of its language, strip it of its names, and give it a new identity, and that's exactly what they did. And as they expanded, people that they conquered who were not Christians and Jews, the protected people of the book, they were given only two choices, either convert or die. And this is why Islam was responsible for the murder of 70 million Hindus in India. 70 million who refused to convert to Islam. Islam continued to expand. By the 1600s, Islam covered more of the earth's surface than the Roman Empire did at its peak. Let me repeat. Islam covered more of the earth's surface than the Roman Empire did at its peak. And the Roman Empire was pretty big. This is how powerful the Islamic State or the Islamic Caliphate had become. Between the 1600s and the 1800s, the Europeans were experiencing their European Revolution. This is how they figured out how to make products on factory lines and produce products so fast that they can sell in the market, which brought money so fast into the European armies. And that's how they were able to build their armies and grow and strengthen and build weaponry. And this is how the Europeans were able to stop the Muslims at the gates of Vienna on 9/11. The date 9/11 is so symbolic in the Islamic calendar. That's exactly why Osama bin Laden chose to attack America on 9/11. Because on 9/11, the armies of Europe, the Christian armies, defeated Islam. And right now, America is the pinnacle of Christendom in the eyes of the Islamists worldwide. Because America is the superpower of the Judeo-Christian value system and of the Western world, Western civilization. The Europeans stopped them at the gates of Vienna, and then they started kicking them out of cities, out of towns, out of countries, and they kicked the Muslims all the way into North Africa and the Middle East. And that's why you see the concentration of Muslims in North Africa and the Middle East. And the Islamic Caliphate, or the Islamic Empire, or the Islamic State ended in 1924 in Turkey by President Ataturk, less than 100 years ago. By the time the Islamic Empire ended, the Islamic State ended, it had ruled for 1400 years and killed in the process 270 million people killed by the sword. Because remember, back then there was no weapons of mass destructions. There was no biological weapons. How many of you knew this history? Raise your hand. Oh, you're good Act for America members. Okay, good education. Where's Dan? Good education, Dan. Good for you. And Beverly and everybody else. Good. Usually when I ask this question, when I'm speaking to public, you see these little hands kind of, shaking, not sure. Maybe one or two finally mix it up, shaking, because they are really not sure how much they knew. It is shocking. But you see, we have very little knowledge of history outside of this group. Very little knowledge of history. We don't teach history. Our enemy knows their history. We don't know our history. Right now, right now you talk to a teenager. You ask them, tell me about World War II. They look at you with their eyes crossed. World War II, for them, that's ancient history. This is how ignorant we are of history. And you hear people talk about, oh, the Islamic State, as if it's a new phenomenon. The Islamic State ended less than 100 years ago. What the Muslims did is just re-establish the Islamic Caliphate. What's new? They feel it is their right. As a matter of fact, after the Islamic State ended in 1924 by President Ataturk, a group of Muslims in Egypt got together and they said, how can Christendom win over Islam? I mean, Islam is superior to all other religions. Muslims are superior to all other people. Therefore, we need to organize, re-strengthen, and re-establish the caliphate. And they started organizing. The Muslim Brotherhood, Al-Akhwan al-Muslimin, started in Egypt in 1928. And today, the Muslim Brotherhood has 70 offshoot Islamic organizations, including Al-Qaeda, Hamas, and ISIS. Remember, al-Baghdadi, the head of ISIS, was in our prisons in 2011 as a leader of the Muslim Brotherhood. This is the same al-Baghdadi who re-established the Islamic State. The Islamic State that President Obama tells us, and he insists, it's not Islamic, it has nothing to do with Islam. Because President Obama knows better than al-Baghdadi, the Khalif, the head of ISIS, who has a PhD in Islamic theology out of the University of Baghdad, no less. So, al-Baghdadi with a PhD in Islamic theology, and by the way, was one of the most stellar students at the university. He was very well known in Iraq. But our President Obama knows better about the religion. They're nothing but a JV team, and they are not Islamic. I swear to God, he knows it. That's the truth, and that he is convinced that's the truth. While the world laughs at us. So why should we be concerned about the Muslim Brotherhood? In the 30s and 40s and 50s, a lot of scholars in the Western world thought the Islamic State is over. The Islamic State will never be resurrected. Islam is finished. They don't have the resources. They don't have the power. They don't have the intellectual ability to invent things. I mean, after all, what have you seen come out of the Islamic world in the last 400 years? In areas of copyrighted great ideas or Nobel Prize winners or whatever. So a lot of scholars in the West thought Islam was over. But two things happened in the Middle East that gave the Islamists the money and the power to explode on the world stage. Oil. The discovery of oil, which we discovered in the 60s, and the Saudis were able to nationalize it. We were stupid enough to let them nationalize it. That gave them the money to spread their radical ideology worldwide. The Saudis have spent over $70 billion building mosques and Islamic madrasas worldwide. And the second thing that happened was Ayatollah Khomeini coming to power in 1979. That gave the Islamists the spiritual covering in order to move forward. So now they have the money, they have the blessing of the spiritual covering, and they exploded on the world stage. The Muslim Brotherhood wrote a plan in 1982, a 100-year plan for radical Islam to infiltrate and dominate the West and establish an Islamic government on earth. In the counter-terrorism circles, this plan became known as the Project. What makes the project so unique is it gives tactics and proposals as to how to infiltrate the West, how to use our laws against us, how to use our open-mindedness against us, how to use our multiculturalism against us. They talk about how to start non-profit organizations and human rights organizations and civil organizations and maintain the appearance of moderation in order to advance the radical Islamic agenda in the West. They talk about how to build community centers in the inner cities and use them as recruiting centers. They talk about how to get democratically elected Muslims on all levels in the West, including government, NGOs, etc. They talk about how to get Muslim interns in all governmental offices so they can have an insider view as to how policy is done on the highest levels. They talk about how to work with like-minded progressive organizations that share similar goals. For example, this is why when you see CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, working with the ACLU, you scratch your head and you think to yourself, how can these two people work together? What do they have in common? But the ACLU is being used as the useful idiots at the hands of CARE, an organization with an agenda. They started implementing their plans in Europe. Remember, the plan started in 1982. In the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, and now all the early 2000s. Here we are, 2016. Europe has morphed from Europe to Eurabia. Europe is no longer the place you used to go visit. And I visited there 2 years ago, before ISIS was what it is, and before the crisis now of the immigration. 2 years ago, I was on a cruise ship in Marseille, and they told us specific instructions. You can get out of the port, and you can only walk these 2 blocks. Do not get out of there. It's very dangerous. The Islamists are there, and there is murder, there is rape. If you cross over those blocks, we do not guarantee your safety. They told us not to take any money with us, except for credit cards, that we can use only on that strip on Marseille, and that's it. I couldn't believe my eyes. I had actually an imam terrorist in the cabin next to me who didn't know I was in the cabin, and I'm sitting reading my book on the balcony, and they were sitting plotting next to me how they're going to bomb in Spain. So of course I go down to the security, who happen to be all Israelis, by the way, in case you do not know, all security on cruise ships are Israelis, and I happen to speak Hebrew. And I told them I was just sitting next, and next to my cabin there is this terrorist who happens to be a doctor from Egypt, who was next to me. That's a whole other story. Do not let me digress. But this is how Europe is gone. Right now, as I'm speaking to you, there are 85 Sharia courts operating in Britain right now, parallel to British courts. Right now. In France alone, they have 725 no-go zones. 725. This is the little dirty secret that nobody wants to talk about. And you wonder what France is all of a sudden shocked. Why do they have such an Islamic problem, and how can they pull such terrorist attacks? That's why. But what we are seeing in Europe right now is a preview as to what's coming to the United States. Because they are moving forward with their plan much faster than what we had anticipated. Because remember, they wrote a 100-year plan for radical Islam to infiltrate and dominate the West and establish an Islamic government on earth. They already established an Islamic government. They didn't need to wait 100 years. They established it within 30 years after writing the plan. Europe is already infiltrated and almost dominated. Gone. Europe is 1 minute to midnight. Europe is dying. America is the last man standing. So why should we be concerned about the Muslim Brotherhood in America? Because they wrote the plan for the destruction of the United States in 1991. Here is the plan. The plan is titled مذكرة تفسيرية للهدف الاستراتيجي العام للجماعة في أمريكا الشمالية. Yes, I do speak Arabic and I do read Arabic. The title in English is an explanatory memorandum on the general strategic goal for the group in North America, written in 5/22/1991. This document was presented as evidence in the largest terrorism trial ever in the history of the United States, where our government sued the Holy Land Foundation, one of the largest Islamic charities in America, for raising millions of dollars in America and sending it overseas to support terrorism. Our government handed down 108 guilty verdicts to Muslim Americans and Muslim American organizations who were involved raising money here in the United States and sending it overseas. And by the way, did you know that the average amount they raised was $160, which is the price for a suicide belt for a suicide bomber to blow himself up? Millions raised in the United States. So that's the plan for the United States. And I'm just going to read you one paragraph out of the plan that will give you a pretty good idea of their intentions and what they are thinking. When I said to you that they don't mince words and they don't beat around the bush, as I'm reading these words, I want you to remember my words. The title of this paragraph is Understanding the Role of the Muslim Brother in North America. The process of settlement is a civilization jihadist process with all the word means. The Ikhwan, which is the Arabic word for brothers, must understand that their work in America is a kind of grand jihad in eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands, meaning us, by their hands and the hands of the believers meaning the Ikhwan or the Muslim Brotherhood, so that it is eliminated and Allah's religion is made victorious over all other religions. Do they mince words? No. Can they get any clearer than this? And our government knows this, by the way. This is no news to them. But the most important page about this document is the last page. Because the last page lists 29 front Islamic organizations set up in the United States for the sole purpose of destroying our country from within. And notice when I'm going to start reading them to you, I'm not talking about ISIS and those who want to blow us up militarily. We know that there is that element of it. But this is a civilization jihad. Remember what they said, the civilization jihad, meaning a cultural jihad? This is the cultural war that they are raging against us. And here are the names of the organizations involved. ISNA, the Islamic Society of North America. Now, if some of you are familiar with that name, it's because they are advisors to President Obama about Middle East policy. It was actually the president of ISNA who wrote President Obama's speech, the first famous speech he delivered to the Arabic world in Egypt. The president of ISNA wrote that speech. So we not only have the fox watching the hen house, we have the fox inside the White House talking policy in the ear of the president. Number 2 on the list is the MSA, the Muslim Student Association. The Muslim Student Association has more chapters on American college campuses than the Democrats and the Republicans combined. And we wonder why we're losing our universities. Number 8 on the list is NATE, the North American Islamic Trust, which owns the deed to over 90% of mosques in the United States. Number 22 on the list is IAP, the Islamic Association for Palestine, which later became CARE, the Council on American-Islamic Relations, which is a terror front for the terrorist organization Hamas, set up right here in the United States. And I'm going to focus at this point on what they're talking about in this plan. And as you can see, I just read you tidbits of this plan. In this plan, they go into details that will make the hair on the back of your neck stand up straight. And by the way, they wrote this plan in 1991. Over 20 years ago, they began implementing their plan in America. And they have an organization set up to attack us in every area of our society. Publishing, education, media, public relations, every single area of our society. But at this point, I want to focus on education. Because how do you change a culture? Through education. And that's what I want to focus on in the latter part of my presentation. Education. Because of the Saudis and their oil, they started pumping millions of dollars into our universities, setting up Middle East study departments, and political science departments, and appointing Arab professors who are anti-Israel, anti-America, to teach our children that America is bad, Israel is evil, and the Islamic world is the underdog and the oppressed. And to give you an idea of the extent of the Saudi peddling that has taken hold of our universities, I'm going to share with you some numbers. The King of Saudi Arabia gave the University of Arkansas $20 million. $22 million was given to Harvard University from 2 Saudi sheikhs linked to Al-Qaeda. $28.1 million was given to Georgetown University to set up their Middle East study department, by actually named after Prince Bandar bin Talal. Remember the prince that gave Giuliani the $10 million after 9/11, and Giuliani told him you can shove it where the sun doesn't shine? That guy has a whole department in his name, $28.1 million at Georgetown University. And by the way, they call me an Islamophobe. $5 million given to MIT, $1.5 million to Texas A&M, $5 million to Rutgers University, $5 million to Columbia University. The list goes on. UC Santa Barbara, Johns Hopkins University, Duke University, American University, UCLA, Howard University, and I can go on and on and on and on. You get the idea. From the Ivy League to the community colleges and everything in between. Every time you pump gas in your car, remember, while you're pumping gas, they are pumping hatred and venom into our children's minds and our colleges and universities in America. And that's why we must become energy independent tomorrow. People ask me all the time, Brigitte, why is the media so biased? My gosh, God forbid you're watching CNN or CNN International if you're, overseas. I don't know about you, but if you ever take a cruise or go overseas, watching CNN International, you might as well be watching ISIS television in English. America is evil, Israel is evil, nobody can do anything good, we are so bad, we are oppressors, and the Islamic world is the underdog, and oh my gosh, we need to get with the program because all the rest of the world is nice and we are just evil. I tell people, why are you surprised? Because for the last 20 plus years, all these students graduating from our best universities have been fed a steady diet of hate and resentment against America. They are today the news anchors, the news writers, the news reporters, the policy makers, the foreign policy shapers. I mean, just look at our president. We don't have a commander-in-chief. We have an apologizer-in-chief who never misses an opportunity to apologize for America. The strategy worked so well on college campus that the Islamists decided, why wait until the kids get to college? Why don't we start with them in 6th and 7th grade in middle school and high school? This way, by the time they get to college, they are 18 years old and they vote, and we have them in the palm of our hands. So the Islam Project was launched in 1991 in California. And they started providing consultants to America's top publishers who publish social studies books and history books to teach them about Islam. So the publishers started introducing a course about Islam to be taught in public school. And the course is a 3-week course where students have to adopt Islam, memorize and recite verses from the Quran, adopt Islamic names, fast for 1 day for Ramadan if they can, and go on a field trip to a mosque to experience what it's like to be a Muslim. And when I started speaking about this after my second book, They Must Be Stopped, you know, people would say to me, "Oh, Brigitte, you're exaggerating. There is no possible way that this could be happening in our public schools. I mean, you know, we have separation of church and state." Yeah, exactly. So I learned there is nothing like show and tell. This is the course that was introduced in 1991 in the state of California, later Texas, and then all over the nation, over 20 years ago. This course is called the Islam course. It is put out by a company called Interact Publishing, based in California. And I'm going to just read you some little tips, just little quotes from this course, so you can see what little Michael and Sarah are studying in our public schools. So this is a teacher instruction, by the way, course. And I got this course because it was presented as evidence by the Thomas More Law Center when they sued the Excelsior School in Byron, California for indoctrinating the children into religion. And this is the course that they admitted as evidence in their trial. So this is strictly for the teachers. If you call the school, you can't even get a course like this because it's only for the teachers, exclusive. But here's what the course says. The teacher starts her instructions or his instruction by saying, "From the beginning, you and your classmates will become Muslims. You will be a member of a caravan." This is how the teacher starts the course to the students. "Okay, you all, you're Muslims for the next 3 weeks." The teacher continues instructions by saying, "Dressing as a Muslim and trying to be involved will increase your learning and enjoyment. Finally, trying your best at all tasks will guarantee you an excellent grade and a more enjoyable time." So what is the teacher doing? Dangling the great carrot in front of the children. If you are so nice, you're going to get good grades if you get with the program. Here is the page about all the Islamic names that they can choose from. They've got boys' names, girls' names. And here, this is the kicker. This is wisdom cards. These are cue cards for students to memorize their lesson. Just like in math, mathematics, they have cue cards for kids to memorize the multiplication tables, etc. This is to memorize the Islam lesson. So this card in particular talks about jihad. And I want to share this card with you because usually when we hear the word jihad, it's usually associated with terrorist activities or terrorism. I mean, after all, terrorist organizations call themselves Islamic Jihad. How many of you have heard of the Islamic Jihad organization? Islamic Jihad, it's the name of a terrorist group. Jihad, the word jihad is mentioned in the Quran 40 times. 36 times out of 40 as a holy war against the infidels to either kill them or subjugate them. But here's what little Michael and Sarah are studying in public school about jihad. A jihad is a struggle by Muslims against oppression, invasion, and injustice. Now, if these words sound familiar to you, it's because these are the talking points of Al-Qaeda. These are the talking points of Islamists. Anytime Al-Qaeda used to issue video press release, remember those days by Osama bin Laden, to tell America why they hate us? What do they say they hate us for? They are fighting oppression. They are fighting invasion. They are fighting injustice. They want us out of Arab land. We are unjust and evil and big and colonial. They were fighting oppression. We were oppressing the poor Muslim world. Anytime you hear a suicide bomber, a Palestinian suicide bomber, issue his last video before he blows himself up, he says he is dying because he is fighting oppression and he is fighting injustice and he is fighting occupation and he is fighting oppression and injustice and invasion. So what's happening right now is we are teaching the talking points of our enemies to our children in public school in 6th and 7th grade, paid for by our tax dollars. And this has been happening for over 20 years. You wonder why we have a problem with anti-Semitism and anti-Americanism? Now, this started over 20 years ago. That means the kids that were studying this stuff now at their 30s. You wonder why they hate Israel and they resent America and our troops and us being in the Middle East? Because we're the evil ones. And when the troops are returning, those lefties are saying, well, of course they hate you. Because you're there, you're occupying their land, you are so unjust to these poor Muslims. Of course they hate you, they just want you out. Just get out and everything will be fine. You know, Hitler made a very important statement. Hitler said, give me the children, I will change society in 10 years. And that's exactly what he did.
That's right.
And this is why today, when you look at our society, and you see a socialist running for president, and you see America haters running for president, and you see all the support that they have, and you think to yourself, how can these people have such support? It's because we have a new generation who are embarrassed of America, who do not like America, who are not proud of America, who do not think America is exceptional, who loathe our allies, especially the state of Israel, because they have been fed a steady diet of hate and resentment, not only in college, but it's also in our middle and high schools. And it's been happening for years. While Americans have been asleep at the switch. You know why? Because our kids come home from school, mommy's cooking dinner, Michael and Sarah are sitting at the table doing their homework. Mommy looks at Michael and say, Mikey, honey, how are you doing with your homework? You can't go out and play until you're done with your homework. And Mikey finishes homework and he says, Mommy, I'm done. Can I go out and play now? And Mommy said, sure, honey, go. Mommy didn't see what Michael was studying or what homework he was doing from school. And speaking of homework, I have got to use this homework example for you. So they give them homework assignment, right? Here's a homework assignment for you. Become a Muslim warrior during the Crusades or during an ancient jihad. Explain weapons, tactics, etc. That's homework. This is the course. I mean, you know what? You would think I'm making this stuff up. But this is how little we knew what was happening in our public schools. You want to know what they're teaching, talking about separation of church and religion? Here's another important segment because we have a lot of pastors here, I heard. So I've got to share this piece. The children are asked to memorize and recite verses from the Quran. They are asked to recite the Shahada or the Islamic prayer, which is the Islamic salvation. This is how you convert to Islam. It's the equivalent of the salvation prayer in English. I accept Jesus as my Lord and Savior, and I give my heart to Jesus and my life to Jesus, etc. Here's what Johnny and Sally are reciting in public schools. Praise be to Allah, Lord of creation, the compassionate, the merciful, King of judgment day. You alone we worship, and to you alone we pray. Did I mention this is public schools? Guide us to the straight path, the path of those whom you have favored, not of those who have incurred your wrath, which is the Jews, nor of those who have gone astray, which is the Christians. This is utter nonsense, and this is exactly what's happening in our public school system. By the way, this course is no longer taught like this. Right now, this course is weaved into our textbooks, into our social studies and history books. Actually, the students cannot pass 22 questions of the SOL exam out of this course. 22 questions for the kids to pass their exam are out of this course. This is how this has been weaved into our school system. This is what we are dealing with as a nation right now. This is the stuff that nobody wants to talk about because nobody wants to offend anybody. Everybody's walking on eggshells. Well, I say this is the time we take political correctness and throw it in the garbage where it belongs. We're about to lose our country, and people are afraid to speak. And if you speak, they have all sorts of labels for you. You're an Islamophobe, you're a racist. you're a bigot. Well, if anybody's going to accuse me of being a racist, they better be able to speak with me in Arabic, my mother tongue. Time to throw the labels in the garbage. Time to start speaking the truth and defend the country. And I hope you check your sensitivity sleeves out the door, because Brigitte Gabriel is in the room. And when I look at our country and I hear all these people apologizing for our country and all these people embarrassed for our country, and I watch the news, I'm a news junkie, by the way, this is all I watch. I live it, eat it, breathe it, live on it, enjoy it, morning, night, that's all I do. I need to go to life. But when I watch the news, and I watch what's happening in the news right now, and the safe rooms in our universities, and all these little wussy children we have in our colleges, and I think to myself, what happened to our generations? And when I see all these people who are embarrassed of America and complaining about America and cannot see anything good in America, I say to them, by all means, we'll give you a one-way ticket to get the hell out of here and back to whatever country you came from. This room, I see a tapestry of color, people from all backgrounds, people from all religions, black, white, blonde, pale, black, you name it, all here. This is what makes America wonderful. We all came together to become Americans, and I am sick and tired when I hear people say, I'm an African American, and I'm a Spanish American, and I'm a Vietnamese American, and I'm Italian American, and I'm an Irish American. I am nothing but an American. For America is all about. That's what Act for America family is all about. We are one. People who put their differences aside and came together because we love this country. We want to preserve this country. We want to make sure this country continues to be the greatest nation on the face of the planet. And while I'm on a roll, I believe English is the official language of the United States. Shall we make so? All right. Next time I'm depressed, I know exactly where to come. I am here today not only to share with you problems. We all know we have a problem in our country. As a matter of fact, we all know so much that we have a problem in our country that both the Republicans and Democrats in this nation acknowledge. We have a problem that needs to be fixed. And that's why they're going out of the usual to get somebody that can fix the problem, or somebody that they believe can fix the problem. This election is an election about survival. It's about the survival of the United States. It's about the survival of Western civilization. Because America is the superpower of Western civilization. This is why I hope every single one of you goes out and votes this election. Your life and your children's life depend on it. 9/11 was a defining moment for the United States. 9/11 was especially a defining moment for me. You see, we all on 9/11 did the same thing. We all sat around watching our TV screens, feeling so frustrated, watching the images of the World Trade Center tumble down again and again and again, feeling brokenhearted, feeling helpless, feeling sad, feeling angry, feeling, how can somebody do such a thing to us? How can murderers be so bloody that they would hijack planes and use them, as missiles into human missiles into skyscrapers? We couldn't believe somebody would do this to us. That day, my two young daughters came home from school that afternoon, and my youngest daughter, who was around my age when I was wounded in Lebanon, looked at me and she said, "Mommy, why did they do this to us?" And I found myself looking into her eyes and repeating to her exactly what my daddy said to me. They hate us because they consider us infidels and they want to kill us. Here we were, 2 generations apart, 2 continents apart. I was a young Lebanese girl, she's a young American girl. I spoke Arabic, she speaks English. 8,000 miles apart, 30 years apart. And I found myself repeating to my daughter exactly what my father said to me. That day was my defining moment. That day I vowed that I will do everything I can to make sure that my daughter will never ever look into her child's eyes and repeat to him or to her what my daddy said to me and what I had to say to her. That day I was reborn as an activist. I laid on my couch. September 11th happened on a Tuesday morning until Sunday, unable to move. I was in shock, flashback, absolutely miserable, remembering my own experience, thinking, what can I do to make a difference? And finally, I decided I'm going to start a nonprofit organization called ACT, and I'm going to travel nationwide, and I'm going to educate millions of Americans about the threat of radical Islam to world peace and our national security. And I started traveling, and I started speaking, and I incorporated ACT in 2002 in July. And I started traveling, and I started speaking. And in my first year, I gave 143 presentations in the state of Virginia alone. And I started traveling nationwide. And I realized very quickly that you can educate until the cows come home. Nothing is going to change. I would speak to groups from as small as 8 people meeting at Frankie's Ribs at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning. Who meets at 7 o'clock in the morning? To groups of 10,000 in some of those mega churches. And one question always kept popping up. Now that I'm educated, what can I do? Give me something to do. And I realized there has never been more education than we have now. You type in the word Islam in Google and you get 60,000 pages. I wrote two New York Times bestsellers on the subject. It's not that we are lacking education. It is that we are lacking what to do about the education that we know. People want something to do to make a difference. And that's when I launched our activism arm, our grassroots network in 2007, Act for America, and launched our chapter. And today I'm proud to tell you that we have 1,000 chapters nationwide and 300,000 members and a full-time lobbyist on Capitol Hill. Thank you. You are sitting at a chapter meeting. I wish all our chapter meetings would be like this. I wish all 1,000 would be like this. Unfortunately, they're not. But look at here tonight. This vision started out of laying on the couch in my family room. So when somebody tells me I do not know what to do, everybody has something to do. Everybody can make a difference. And here we are today. I'm here today to empower you. I'm here to share with you what people can do to make a difference. And I always tell people say, oh, Brigitte, we're so small. The majority of the country is so big. We lost America. I have one of my donors, surprisingly, he still gives me money, but he keeps saying to me, we lost America. It's done. It's finished. We're dead. And I tell him, forget it. We're growing. It's great. We're going to take America back, and we're going to make America great again. The devil made me do it, I swear. But I think I can use that phrase. We need to make America great again. And I always remind people, 2% of the passionate would always overrule over 98% of the indifferent. So when you think you're helpless because, oh, we need to wake up, 50 million people in our country, no, we don't. 2% of the passionate will always overrule over 98% of the indifferent. Always remember that. Always remember that. And this is what Act for America is doing. I'm proud to tell you that today, through our hard work of our chapters, who are incredible, we have helped pass 43 bills in 22 states in the last 6 years. 43 bills in 22 states. The last bill we passed, see something, say something, and we passed it in the state of Missouri? Where did we pass it? Kelly? Where's Kelly? Okay. He's not in the room. We passed it in some state, and actually 2 states so far, because we passed it already in North Carolina, and that says that our National Guard are allowed to carry arms to protect themselves. That's another bill that we passed. That's right. And say something says that when you come forward with a tip to the authorities about a suspicious activity, you cannot be sued as a citizen. So you are protected and CARE cannot come after you. These are the type of bills Act for America is passing. We have passed ALAC, American Laws for American Courts, working through our chapters and passed it already in 12 states. And now it is down in the legislature in Ohio, and I hope we're going to be able to pass ALAC, and we need you all involved and all engaged. ALAC says, American Laws for American Courts says that no law, no foreign law that is not compatible with the Constitution of the United States would be allowed to be used in any American courtroom. And we are trying to pass that law because, to your surprise, we have documented over 143 cases where Sharia law has been used in the United States instead of the Constitution, in 22 states. People are surprised. But this is why we started pushing ALAC. And ALAC is here for a vote in your state. You need to do everything you can to make sure that Ohio would only recognize the Constitution as the only law permissible for use in any Ohio courthouse. And those of you who are not engaged with our chapter, we need you engaged, and I will give you more details later on how to get involved. Another thing, other than the bills, right now Act for America has 13 bills in different states at play right now relating to freedom of speech, the Free Speech Defense Act that we already passed in 6 states, and we are now pushing in other states. This is the type of stuff that ACT is doing. We are building the firewalls, city by city, state by state, to protect America. So America will not see the fate that now has befallen on Europe. Europe did not have an organized movement. America does have an organized grassroots movement. It's called ACT for America. And we are the NRA of national security. Another thing that we worked on, and I apologize, our chapter leaders, I know you all and our chapter members are very familiar with the stuff we're doing, but I know we have a lot of other people who are visiting here tonight who are not as familiar with the stuff that you already all know. So I see a lot of heads shaking. But I'm going to share with you what Act for America is doing and the work that these amazing chapter leaders and members in here have been working on. Another project that Act for America did was tackle the problem with our textbook education problems. After I wrote my book in 2008, They Must Be Stopped, my second New York Times bestseller, and I discussed the education, what's happening in our education system. We decided at Act for America to launch a 2-year textbook project where we hired 4 top analysts to study and research 38 textbooks put on by America's top publishers, social studies books and history books, and write down all the lies and all the misrepresentation and all the facts that were missed and put it all in a report. We titled the report Education or Indoctrination, and we mailed that report to 70,000 elected school board members nationwide saying, what are you going to do about the problem? Because you're elected to protect and watch and make sure our children learn the truth. And if you're not going to do that, we're going to kick your behind out and replace you with somebody who knows how to do the job. The report is posted on our website, actforamerica.org, in PDF. This is the executive summary. The full report is 211 pages. And a quick note, by the way, do you know how they're teaching September 11th right now in public schools? September 11th was perpetrated by a group of men driven by a cause. It doesn't say their religion. It doesn't say who they are. It doesn't say what their cause is. So for all our students are concerned, these could be a bunch of Baptists from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the abortion issue is their cause, or a bunch of Jews from Brooklyn, New York, and Israel is their cause. Did you know that? Did you know this is the level of watering down? I mean, facts. September 11th were perpetrated by Islamic terrorists who adhere to radical Islam. At least call it that much. So this is why Act for America is working on tackling the state book issue. And I'm proud to tell you that our chapter leader in Texas and our chapter members last year worked on the textbook issue and testified before the School Board of Education. And we got to the point that we put so much pressure on the publishers that the publishers would not publish the books for the year 2015-2016 this year without the approval of Act for America. We changed the books in the state of Texas. What Act for America has been able to create is a grassroots army nationwide, organized and networked. They're not fragmented people singing all a different tune. They are coordinated with a big nerve center where everybody reports to the nerve center, where we know what's happening around the country and what people can work on. This is the unifying factor, and that's what gives us the strength, because we're not a small group that can be broken. We are a powerful national organization that can fight the big fight and even go up against America's publishers. And now I get to the part as to what you can do. How many of you would like to be a part of the solution to the problem we have in our country? Raise your hand. Good. I am honored to be in your presence, because we are all here today to make a difference for our country. When you came in on your chairs, I think it was on your chairs, underneath? Okay, underneath the chairs, you have 2 sheets of papers. Please pick them up. Now the people in the front who are chapter members and volunteers, they don't need them. You're already chapter members. For those of you who are here today, under your chairs, there are 2 sheets of papers. One paper says action cards. Because today I'm going to show you how you are going to become a voice affecting your community and our nation. In this action card, we would love for you to join us to be able to get our action alerts. Those of you who are not signed up to get our action alerts, we want to be able to reach you when there's a bill coming down for a vote, so you can call your elected officials and put pressure on them. This is how Act for America has been able to pass 43 bills in 22 states. This is how we've been able to do it. So we need you to get our emails and action alerts. Those of you who wish to get that, please check that box. Receive free ACT email. It doesn't cost you anything to get our action alerts, to be alerted about bills coming down, not only in your state, but also on the federal level. Please check that box and write your name. Please print it legibly and write your email address. And anybody that does not have a pen and needs a pen, please raise your hand. Get a pen from your neighbor, somebody will get you a pen. And please look around. If somebody has a pen and somebody next to you has their hands raised, please get them a pen. If you cannot get a pen, prick your finger, write it with blood. I don't care, as long as you write your name. This is how we are mobilizing citizens to get organized and get together. Next, join a chapter. We have chapters all over the country. We have great chapters in Ohio. We want you to join a chapter. If you are not active already, please join a chapter. We have chapters. I spoke at our chapter in Cincinnati yesterday. I spoke at our chapter in Columbus night before last, and here we are today. We have amazing chapter leaders here. Dan, I want you to stand up, please. Dan is our chapter leader here. He's the one who organized this whole tour. Those of you who are visiting, I want you to know that the work without heroes like Dan, this could not be possible. Those of you who want to join a chapter and become more active, make sure you talk to Dan at the end. He can notify you about their chapter meetings, how they meet, etc. Right now we're not starting any new chapters because we are completely filled and are unable to handle the growth. Literally, we don't have enough employees to get the country mobilized. And isn't that a sad state? Yes, ma'am, you had a question? Yes.
And that's why I can't. Should I stand or just sit there?
You can stand.
All right.
Is it related to this?
It's related to what you said before.
Okay.
Just from living in the Cleveland area, we all notice that there are many more Muslims in our malls, in our supermarkets, in our Starbucks.
I'll repeat the question.
How are we supposed to regard this? Are we, because after hearing what you say, and all of us are influenced so much by diversity, welcoming new people into the community, are we supposed to be aware of the fact that these women and children and their husbands that are, at this point, even I'm talking about Beachwood Place where I live on the east side, eastern suburbs, you go there almost any day, especially Sundays, almost 40 to 50%. Women walking around with burqas and their faces covered. Who are we? Are we supposed to be concerned or are we supposed to look the other way?
To be very concerned, as she said, she's talking about the rise of Islamists and Muslims with Islamic garbs in the Ohio area and around Cleveland. You should be very concerned because the Department of Homeland Security just issued a report out of New Jersey naming the cities where ISIS and radicalism is rising. The most sensitive places in America, Ohio is one of them. And that just came out. So yes, you should be concerned, and that's why you should be organized, you should be involved with Act for America. This is how we bring people like us who care together to network, to work on bills, to make sure we pass ALAC, American Laws for American Courts, to make sure that the state of Ohio, you're not going to have a parallel system just like the U.S. Constitution. And I'll take questions at the end. I just want to make sure I continue on this. Make sure you print your email. Once you print your email, and you're done with this page, please pass it to the center aisles and our volunteers are going to pick it up from you. Those of you who want to sign up, please fill your papers. When you're done sending your name and your email and your information, please raise your paper up and our volunteers will pick it up from you. Okay? Do you need a pen? If it's a question, we'll do it later. Okay, thanks. This is why we need you involved. This is why we need to be able to protect the country. This is why we need to be able to build the firewalls around the country. Now, for those of you who filled this paper, just keep it held up and they will come and pick it up. Keep it up and our volunteers will come and collect them as fast as possible. And I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you getting involved because this is how we're mobilizing the country. This is how we are networking the country and building a grassroots network. Now, what does an organization need other than members? Money. Money. I'm talking to the right people. Thank you. And what I want to share with you as we are talking about money is how I started this organization. When I started Act for America, I thought everybody's going to donate to support the cause. I canceled our health insurance from 2002 till 2004 for a family of 4. So I can put gas in my car and travel all over the state to fund me launching this new hobby that I found. I pledged my kids and I spent my kids' college fund to set up and get Act for America because I did not know how to ask for money. By the time my kids went to college, they had to go to community college because I literally spent all their college tuition that I had saved. They went for 2 years to community college and then they transferred and worked their way and they graduated. I'm not asking you, thank you. Thank you. Tonight I'm appealing to your generosity. I'm not asking you to spend your kids' college fund. I'm not asking you to cancel your health insurance. I already paid the price to get the organization to where it is today. And I want you to know that I'm speaking here today, and just like I spoke in Columbus and just like I spoke in Cincinnati, I'm not getting paid an honorarium. It did not cost the chapter. We did not charge the chapter, obviously, money or anywhere I spoke to come here. I paid for my airfare, as well as I have with me here 3 of our top executives. I have the executive director, the national field director, and the director of development right here. We paid for our airline flights, we paid for our hotels, we paid for our meals, we paid for our rental car. This is our investment in your state and in your community. And this is how Act for America raises money. We do these events and we hope that we can raise enough money to cover our expenses and also have enough money left over in the box so we can devote it to projects, just like the projects we spend money on, like textbook projects and other projects we are working on. So today, Act for America is appealing to your generosity. If you wish to support us at any level, $25, $50, $250, $500 or more, we will match you dollar for dollar tonight with a thank you gift of, if you give $25, we're going to give you a dining savings card worth of $25. We have worked a deal with America's top entertainment company that has a contract with 70,000 restaurants nationwide to help Act for America. This is an exclusive program that is not available to nonprofits and small organizations. But the owner of the company is passionate about, conservative about national security, and he wanted to help Act for America. So if you donate $25 or $50 or $500, we're going to give you a dining discount card that you can use in 70,000 restaurants nationwide, good for 1 year, no matter where you travel. If you go to Subway, instead of paying full fare for a Subway sandwich, let's say it's $7, you pay $4. The $3 comes back to Act for America. You go to Carvel Ice Cream, buy one ice cream, you get another one free. The price of that free one is donated to Act for America. You go to Macaroni Grill and you buy a dinner, you buy one meal, get one free. The price of that meal is donated to Act for America. We're not asking you to do anything you don't do already, except now you can dine with purpose. We have these thank you gift. It's a thank you gift for your donation that you can buy it for your grandchildren, for your children who are in college. You can buy 5, 10 cards of $25. You know your kids are eating out at fast food. You know you are eating out at fine dining. This is how we help our country and help fund the organization. So today, I appeal for your generosity. Where else can you donate to a nonprofit organization, a tax-deductible donation, and get a dining savings cards dollar for dollar? And I hope you will help us tonight. We have a saying at Act for America. Our enemies, have the oil. America has us, and this is how we can do it together. So today, for those of you who are interested in supporting us, please fill the information, enter your credit card information, and save this paper because you can use it outside when you go out the door to collect your thank you gift. And when you fill in your information, I want you to know that these forms are hand carried with me on the plane to our office. They are entered into the computer by one person, and then your information is shredded and no one has access to it. I care about your security like I care about my own security. There is also another way to donate if you wish to text. You can text to 91999, text the word Patriot. Text to, right there, 91999. You will get a response back. Text the word Patriot, and you can donate any amount you wish to donate. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, especially for those of you who are going to stand with us financially tonight, because I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to dedicate my life to serving our country, to traveling from city to city, state to state, so I can do the work that I do. Because without your support, I cannot do this. Without the support of people like you who came before you, I wouldn't be able, ACT would not be able to afford to fly 4 executives to the state of Ohio to spend 3 days going from city to city speaking at different places. And this is why I'm so grateful to you. And I cannot end my presentation without asking our military personnel and our veterans to please stand up and be recognized and remain standing after the applause. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. and military personnel kindly remain standing. I have a message for you. I want you all, those of you who sat down, I want you to stand back up. I have a message for you. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for building a nation for me where I can come and be all I can be as an American citizen. I know that my freedoms are built upon your shoulders and your sacrifice. I want to thank you for my freedom of speech. I want to thank you for the fact that I am able to stand before you here today and give this presentation without having to worry about my government taking me and throwing me in prison. My freedom is built upon your shoulders and your sacrifice. Thank you for my freedom of religion. Thank you for my freedom of speech. Thank you for every freedom I have. Without your sacrifice, I wouldn't enjoy those freedoms. You are not only my heroes, but you are the heroes of millions of Americans who are unable to stand before you here today. On their behalf, I thank you. I thank you on behalf of millions of people who are still living under tyranny overseas, who will never have an opportunity to see you, and thank you for the work that you do around the world fighting for freedom. On their behalf, I thank you. And I vow to you that I am building an organization for you that will always praise you, that will always speak of your sacrifice, that will always see to it that our new future generation, the new brats on our college campuses today, understand exactly where their freedom comes from. Because without you, America would not be what it is today. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. May God bless you all. May God bless the United States. Thank you all for being here tonight. It's been an honor and a privilege.